Alright, so today you're going to be reading a short biography about Abigail Adams. You may have heard of her before. She's somewhat famous. Maybe you heard of her as one of the first ladies, the wife of John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States. But anyways, you're going to read a little bit about her today, and what you're going to do is read through using some new reading strategies that are going to help you kind of pay attention to important details and help determine the central idea of the text. You're also going to be looking at difficult words and rephrasing them into your own words so that you get a better understanding of what they mean and get some new strategies on how to figure out those difficult words. So what I want you to do is be reading along with me on the computer. Read through the text that you opened up, the biography, on the computer, and actually type in your answers into the boxes. So first, you're going to need to make a copy of the document, so make sure that you have done that, and make sure you can write on the document, because this is the document that you're actually going to be turning in to Google Classroom in the end. Alright, look at your document, and let's begin reading at the top. Abigail Adams, born November 22nd, 1744, Weymouth, Massachusetts. Died October 28th, 1818, Quincy, Massachusetts, U.S. Alright, Abigail Adams was an American First Lady, 1797 to 1801, the wife of John Adams, 2nd President of the United States, and mother of John Quincy Adams, 6th President of the United States. She was a prolific letter writer whose correspondence gives an intimate and vivid portrayal of life in the young republic. Alright, stop reading. Answer the questions in the box below. The following is an example. So I stopped you really quickly this time because I just want to give you an example of what you're going to be asked to do as you continue to read. So look at the box. You're going to be asked to describe what the author is telling you about. So answer the question, what is the author telling me about in that previous paragraph? Well, I looked through and I realized that the author was basically just telling me about who she was, giving me some details about not what kind of person she is, but just who she was related to. So I put that. The author is telling me about who Abigail Adams was. I know that she's a letter writer. I know that she's the wife of John Adams, 2nd President, and the mother of John Quincy Adams, 6th President. Next question. From this, what does the author want me to understand? Make an inference based on what the author is telling you. So remember, an inference is not directly stated in the text, but it's what you can kind of guess based on what the author is telling you. So based on just the very short bit that I read already, I can infer that Abigail Adams was an important person because she was the wife of the president, and her letters represent life back then. So I was just inferring that she's an important person based on the fact that there's a biography written about her. She was the wife of the 2nd President of the United States, and her letters were obviously really important. And then the last bit is rewrite the last sentence with the bold words using your own words. So I've highlighted a sentence in yellow for you to pay close attention to you. And there are several bold words in that sentence. And basically, I want you to kind of really learn what those words mean by looking them up, finding synonyms, and rewrite the sentence in your own words so that it proves to me you know what those words mean and you understand what that sentence is telling you. So I rewrote it in my own words, saying, she wrote many letters which gave a personal and realistic representation of the new U.S. government. So prolific means many. Correspondence means pretty much letters. Intimate means personal. Vivid means realistic. Portrayal, representation. And then the Young Republic, I looked that up and I realized that it was just the new form of the government back then. So I took all of that new information and I put it in my own sentence. And that's what you're going to be asked to do. All right. Normally I tell you to stop reading, answer the questions, and then you'd know to press play again when you're done. So let's continue on reading. Born to William Smith, a Congregational minister, and Elizabeth Quincy Smith, Abigail was the second of 4 children. Educated entirely at home, she read widely in her father's large library, and the constant flow of interesting, intelligent, and well-educated guests at the Smith home turned her into a learned, witty young woman. For her introduction to great literature, she credited her brother-in-law, Richard Cranch. Abigail's plans to marry John Adams, a Harvard-educated lawyer, 9 years her senior, did not gain the immediate approval of Smith, who considered a lawyer's prospects inadequate. When they married on October 25, 1764, the bride's father, who performed the ceremony, amused the guests by citing a passage from the book of Luke. John came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and some say he has a devil in him. During the first 10 years of their marriage, Abigail gave birth to 5 children, including a daughter who died in infancy, and John Quincy Adams. She managed the second decade of her marriage on her own, as John participated in the colonial struggle for independence as a member of the Continental Congress, and later as a representative of his country in France. Their correspondence during these years, especially when added to the spirited letters penned earlier during their courtship, provides a rich account of their activities and thinking, as well as their love and devotion to each other. It is from these letters that historians, including the Adamses' grandson Charles Francis Adams, have concluded that Abigail played a significant role in her husband's career, particularly in managing the family farm and his business affairs. Because of her, the Adamses avoided the financial ruin that befell some other early presidents, such as Thomas Jefferson, after they left office. As the revolutionary spirit swept through the colonies, Abigail firmly supported the movement for independence. In March 1776, when her husband prepared to gather with his colleagues to write a statement of principles that would soon be adopted by the Continental Congress as the Declaration of Independence, she asked him to remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Although this letter has often been cited correctly as evidence of her fervent desire for women's rights, she did not champion, then or later, the right of women to vote, a position virtually unheard of at the time. She did, however, strongly support a woman's right to education, and in 1778 she wrote her husband that you need not be told how much female education is neglected, nor how fashionable it has been to ridicule female learning. She also favored the abolition of slavery. Okay, stop and answer the questions below, just like I did earlier, by making your own inferences and rewriting the yellow highlighted sentence with the bold words in your own words. Press play when you're ready. Okay, let's continue. In 1784, Abigail joined her husband in Europe when he began serving as American minister to Britain. Her letters from Paris and London contain descriptive musings on British royalty, French customs, and the superiority of the quiet life of an American farmer. She wrote in early 1788 that she much preferred her own little farm to the court of St. James's, where I seldom meet with characters so inoffensive as my hens and chickens. Later that year, the Adamses returned to the United States. When John assumed the vice presidency in 1789, Abigail divided her time between the capital city, first New York City, and then, in 1790, Philadelphia, and the family home in Massachusetts. She missed her husband's presidential inauguration in March 1797 in order to care for his sick mother, and during his presidency, she often stayed in Massachusetts to look after the family matters. As First Lady, she kept a rigorous daily schedule, rising at 5 a.m. to manage a busy household and receive callers for 2 hours each day. Unlike Martha Washington, who had been a gracious hostess but avoided all political discussions, Abigail involved herself in the most interesting debates of the day. As the two major political factions, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, later the Jeffersonian Republicans, developed into political parties in the 1790s, she pointed out her husband's friends and foes in both groups. Wow, that was kind of a confusing sentence. Maybe we should go back and reread that. Or maybe that could be a sentence that you focus on for your next box of questions. Let's continue to read. About Alexander Hamilton, who, along with Adams, was a leading Federalist, she wrote that she saw in his eyes the very devil, lasciviousness itself. That sounds like a good word to come back to, just like that previous sentence. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it right now to know that I should come back to look at the sentence and that word so that I can find out what it means. She judged Albert Gallatin, a Republican opponent of her husband, sly, artful, insidious. Ooh, there's another word, insidious. Should look that one up too. Her critics objected that the wife of the president should not insinuate herself in political discussions, Gallatin wrote. She is Mrs. President, not of the United States, but of a faction. It is not right. In November 1800, just as the election that denied John Adams a second term as president was being held, Abigail oversaw the Adamses' move from Philadelphia to the newly constructed presidential mansion in Washington, D.C. Her letters to family members showed her displeasure at finding the building roughly finished and unfurnished. But she warned her daughter not to reveal her thoughts, since people would think her ungrateful. On New Year's Day, 1801, she opened the mansion, soon to be known as the White House, to visitors, continuing a tradition begun by the Washingtons and maintained by every subsequent First Lady until 1933. Again, it says she also favored the abolition of slavery. Okay, so it's time to answer the next questions, but you'll notice that I didn't highlight a sentence for you. I want you to do what I did and find a sentence that kind of confused you, or two sentences that kind of confused you, maybe with some bigger words in it. And what I want you to do is highlight those one or two sentences and then bold some of the words that are more difficult and that you're not quite sure of the definition. And use that sentence of your own choosing for the third box. Alright, so go ahead and choose that sentence. Answer the questions, and then press play when you're ready to go again. You may press stop now, or press pause now. Okay, let's get going again. After leaving office, Abigail and John retired to their home in Massachusetts. She continued a lively correspondence with many people, and even resumed writing to Thomas Jefferson, from whom she had been estranged as a result of political differences. She died in October 1818 and was buried in the First Church of Quincy. Her husband, who died in 1926, was buried beside her. Until the 20th century, few First Ladies shared Abigail Adams' interest in politics or in the treatment of government leaders by the press. She vigorously objected to what she considered inaccurate reporting on her husband and son. But she was not altogether surprised by the lies and falsehoods, writing in 1797 to her sister that she expected to be vilified and abused, with my whole family. Although her approach to the office of First Lady was in many ways advanced, her fame rests primarily on her thousands of letters, which form an eloquent and evocative description of her life and times. She also favored the abolition of slavery. Okay, again, you're going to answer the questions. This time I did highlight a sentence for you, so go ahead and use that. And when you're done, you don't have to press play again. You can just do the little additional reading just for your own self. And when you've fully completed the boxes, I want you underneath the reading to answer, what do you think is the main idea of this text? I'm going to write it out here for you. What is the main idea that the author wants you to know? To answer this question, I'll give you a hint. Look back at what the author is telling you and some of the inferences that you made. That'll help you decide what the main idea is. When you're done, go to Google Classroom, submit the document before Sunday at 11:59 p.m., and you are done with the first reading strategies assignment.